All right. 9.3. Okay, good. Everybody's here now. All right, 9.3 is entitled, can you maybe cut some lights there? Yeah. Yeah, it's just like that's good. Thank you. So using samples and populations to collect data. Okay. So we need to know what the difference between a population and a sample is, and you might have an idea. We're going to define it here right away. But the goal here is to select and defend the choice of using a population or a sample in your data collection. So we want to really examine the difference between these two, when it's appropriate to use a population or a sample. So what is a population? Well, the entire group about which you're getting information from is called the population. And you're going to want to fill in that blank there. The first blank is population right here. So if we're talking about all grade 9s in the school, that would be every single grade 9 that's in the school. Okay, that's the population. If we're talking about the people in our city, it's every single person in our city. That's the population. All of the people or items or whatever you're considering. A census is not next blank you got to fill in, is conducted when data is collected from each member of the population. So collected from each member of the population, a census. And of course, the government usually conducts a census. They send out something in the mail, usually to each address, and say, hey, how many people are living there? What ages are you? Things like that. They want to know that so that they can decide what kind of social programs and how many school-age children there are in the area. So, do we have enough schools, and do we have enough playgrounds? Do we have enough things for the older people too? And so they kind of, they want to know, how many people should be paying taxes and all that stuff too. So they get all that information from a census. Okay, they want to know every person that is living in the city or the country. They wouldn't do something called a sample. Okay, a sample is what is a sample here? If a census or examining or polling the entire population is not feasible, and that's a big word there. Feasible means realistic or able to be done reasonably. Then data is taken from a sample. Okay, so I guess there's not a real good definition really of a sample, but a sample is a portion of the population. So it's just a portion, and I think you guys know what the word sample means. Let's maybe be a little more exact here, though. I don't really like the fact that there's not really a good definition of a sample here. So sample is a portion of the population. Okay, that's what a sample really is technically. So if we were taking a sample of the grade 9s in this school, then we wouldn't probably ask the questionnaire or the survey to everybody, but instead we would just take a number of you, a smaller number of you, and ask as a representative of the population. So a sample is a portion of the population, and technically you use a sample because it represents the population well. So a sample is a portion of the population, and we'll talk about what kind of samples, the different kind of samples there are. But you want to make sure that if you survey a sample of people, that you get accurate information about the population. That's the whole point. So you only ask a few people that you think would represent well the entire group. Okay, so when a sample is chosen, it represents the entire population. The data will provide a valid conclusion. So if it's a good sample, then you do have a valid conclusion specifically about the population. Okay? So if you wanted to find out what the favorite drink at 7-Eleven was for the grade 9s in the class, you wouldn't ask a grade 12, let's say. So we're trying to find out what the favorite drink at 7-Eleven is for all grade 9s in the class, and you're in grade 12, so can you tell me what your favorite drink is? Yeah, I can. Does that really help you? That wouldn't be, that's not a sample of the population we're interested in. Does that make sense? So you want to choose from the population, and then you'd probably want to try and choose a variety of different people that may have different tastes so that you can kind of get a picture of what the whole group might think. Okay, so everybody or just a small portion, a small group of the population? That's the question. In each case, explain why a population was surveyed instead of a sample. Okay. Number one, to determine the average number of siblings in his class, Carlos surveyed each person in the class. Okay, so that is taking a census of the population, right? That's surveying the entire population, each person in the class. So why would he choose to do that? What are some reasons why he would choose to ask everybody in the class? Yeah.
Because if you only if you only choose like a couple people, they could have like more siblings, and it could be like, oh my gosh, like everyone has like 5 siblings.
Yeah, right. Okay. So sometimes with in a class, and you said a sample of maybe a couple people wouldn't be well represented because the population or the whole class probably isn't that big to begin with, right? So I would say, just to add on to your question, what I would like to write would be that probably the class itself is not too large to ask everybody. Think about your class, right? 20, what do we got, 21 people here right now? So you could ask everyone that question. It would take you 10 minutes, right? Like it's not a big deal. So the class is probably small enough to be able to ask everyone. And yes, sometimes you can choose if you're choosing such a small sample, like just a few people, then then that might misrepresent the population. So if you could ask, 20 or 30 people out of 50 or 70, that's a good sample. That might be a good representation. But you're right. If you're only asking 2 people out of 21 or 22, then that might not give you a valid conclusion. Yeah. So that's what I would say would be the big one. So this seems reasonable that he would ask everyone, because the class is probably small enough to ask everyone. That would be ideal. Okay, B, every 5 years, Statistics Canada conducts a census. One question in the survey is used to determine the ages of the people in the household. So why would they send this out to every household and not just take a sample of the population, Yeah, what do you think?
Because what Lauren was saying, like they could have like really young kids or really old kids.
Yeah.
You can't just ask them.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So a census, asking everybody in the population, the ages of the people in the household, that would take a lot of time and a lot of resources, but it's pretty important that they have accurate information because of what I mentioned earlier, right? The government programs, the schools, the play parks, the roads, everything like that. So, yeah, so in this way, why would they choose, a census and not just a sample? They really need accurate information, I would say. They really need accurate information to make big, decisions as a government. So you need accurate information here. So they ask every household. Okay. I mean, if it wasn't such an important thing, the government was building their programs and doing their budget and things like that, then yeah, if they just kind of want to know, hey, how many people have kids under 10 years old? Well, they might not ask everyone. They might access this data. Maybe a company is able to access some of this data. I don't know. But they would probably just do a sample. If it was a company wondering how many people have children under 10 years old, they would just do a sample. They wouldn't do everybody. They would just do a sample. But if it's really important like this, they would need to ask everybody. Yeah. Okay. Number 2, the Campbell Student Leadership Team, school, right? It's the Campbell School, is planning a school dance, let's say. To attract grade 9 girls to the dance, the team decided to collect data about the preferred music of grade 9 students. The team set up in the hallway to collect data. By the end of the day, they had surveyed 73% of grade 9 students. Okay. So why do you think the data were collected from a sample instead of the entire population? So why would a sample in this case be more reasonable? Okay. So you said that they were trying to get more girls to come to the dance, and it seems to say here that they asked 73% of all grade 9 students. Okay, so that might be a different question you're answering. Let me get back to the original question. That's a good point. We don't know if this is boys or girls that they asked. So let's come back to that, okay? This question here, why did they do a sample instead of asking every single grade 9 student? Why do you think that they chose to do it that way? They have hundreds and hundreds of students in grade 9.
Really long time.
It would take a really long time, yes. So I think that's the answer I was looking for there for this question. Why was data collected? Were data collected from the sample? Yeah, in a large school, too many grade 9 students to ask all of them. Okay, that probably would have been the biggest thing. They might not have had the time, right? So think about the time involved, the cost, maybe the volunteers, right, to do this. Like, because I mean, if you need to ask this, if you need this information quickly, then this might take you a long time to ask 200 and whatever students or however many grade 9 students there are at a big school. Okay, that's good. If they tried to ask everybody too, they might not have had all the grade 9 students there on that day or those days. It might have been a field trip or people sick. So trying to get every single person presents some obvious problems. So a sample would probably be good. Now, do you think that 73% of the grade 9 students, do you think that's enough of a sample? I'm seeing some heads nod. Yeah, that's actually a pretty big number, I would say. That's 73%. That's almost 3/4. So that's of every 4 grade 9 students, you've actually asked 3 of every 4 grade 9 students. Pretty close. So will the opinions of this sample likely reflect the population? You might say that, hey, 73% is an awesome number. So yes. Coming back to your point, and maybe you have some other thoughts, would there be any reason to say that, this is a little misleading? Anybody else want to say that or have any ideas? Anything on the other side? So you had mentioned something before, Abby, about who they asked, right? It doesn't say actually who they asked. They asked 73% of grade 9 students. If they really wanted to know what the girls liked for dance music, then they probably wanted to make sure that there was most of these participants were girls, maybe. Okay, so I mean, 73% is a large number, but we don't know if most of them were girls. Oops, girls or boys. And if you really want to know what the girls think, then maybe they had to be a little bit more strategic with who they asked, not just 73%, but maybe they wanted to hit 73% of the girls, right, to find out what they really like. So 73% is a large number, so I think that's good. But we don't know if most of them were girls or boys, so I would just say it might not represent the population of girls, which I think is what they were after. So that's just some of our thoughts there. Anything else? Okay. All right. So yeah, at a large school, this could be still 150 people or something. So you imagine that takes a lot of time to ask those questions. Okay. All right. Next page. Let's see. Okay. Example 3. Okay, so in each case, identify if data were collected from a sample or a population. Okay, so that's what we want to identify here first. Just going to make this a bit bigger for us to see. And explain if you think that conclusion would be valid or not. So, example A in 3 says, a province considers banning cell phones in all of its schools. To determine the opinions of students on this issue, you poll each student in your school. Okay, so you poll each student in your school to find out if the province should consider banning all cell phones. Is that a sample or a population, first of all? Right, it would be a sample, right? All the kids in your school is not all the kids in the whole province. So yeah, definitely, that's a sample. Perfect. Not everyone was asked. Okay, so it's a sample. And do you think the conclusion here would be valid? Do you think it would be valid? Okay, you said no. You said that you think there would be a massive bias, And then you said because you don't think students would want to give up their phones. Now, that may be true what you said. That may be true what you said. I like that you said that. But think about this. The question is, if you poll each student in your school, would that be a good representation of students all over the province? Okay, some of you are nodding, yes. If I wanted to ask a sample of people a question, would it be a good idea for me to go to, let's say one small group that have a lot of shared experiences, possibly a lot of the same feelings, possibly a lot of the exact same influences, and ask just them a question? Okay, now think about this. How many students in the province here have a classroom on the 4th floor of their building? And I asked you guys only. You know what? Your class is on the 4th floor here. We have a nice view of the city here, don't we? Now, if I only asked you guys, guess what? 100% of you would say you have math class on the 4th floor of your school building. Would that be a good representation of the entire province? How many other schools have 4 floors? Not too many, actually, at all. So, do you see what I'm saying? This, just asking you guys, would not be a good representation of the whole province. So, this is maybe not as obvious, but if you ask just one small group of people that have a lot of the same experiences, a lot of the same influences, possibly a lot of the same shared experience and opinions, that might not be a good representation. So I would say, as we talk about this, and maybe you would agree with me, that I would say that probably this is not a great conclusion because you're only asking kids from one school that have a lot of the same shared experiences. Would you guys be okay if does that sound reasonable? Do you understand that? Right? Like how many students in the province have math class on the 4th floor? I only ask you guys, and I report that 100% of all students, grade 9 students, have math class on the 4th floor. Would that be valid? Not valid. So I need to ask people from different schools, different cities, different areas of the province. Okay. That's a lot of wind there, but let me just summarize that. So, yeah, I would say it's not valid because students are possibly have the same influences, biases, shared experiences, so their answers all may be similar. And is your one class, a good number of students even to ask for the whole province? Probably it's too small a sample, probably too. Okay, anything else to add or any questions about that? Good? Okay. To determine which politician is expected to win the municipal election, every person over 18 and who is eligible to vote in the election is polled. Every person. So when you say, that should be every, not very. Every person, missing an E. Every person is polled. Is that a sample or is that the entire population? Yeah, that would be the entire population of voting people, everybody over 18. So that's a population. Okay. That would take a long time and hard to do, but okay. And would this be a valid conclusion if you were to ask everyone? Okay. The overwhelming answer is yes, because everyone was asked. Okay. With any polling, you're assuming, what kind of assumptions are you making when you ask somebody a question about an issue like this? You're assuming what? What are some of the assumptions? Because there's always assumptions with stuff like this, yeah? Okay, so they're actually choosing the best candidate, for themselves or their family or possibly for the area. Yeah. Okay, so that they are thinking correctly. What else?
Some people who are eligible to vote, but not people who are necessarily going to vote.
Okay, that's a very good point too. You're asking everybody that's eligible to vote, but we know from past experience that not everybody that's eligible to vote actually goes out and votes. So yeah, that's a good point too. It's easy to kind of like say this guy or this girl or this person or yes or no, but to actually go and vote, some people don't do it. So you might get different conclusions that way as well. Yes, and I guess the obvious one is people are actually they've actually decided what they're going to do and they're telling you the truth, and they're not going to change their mind. So that kind of goes along with that as well. Okay. So yes, everyone is asked, but the assumptions you're making are also important to consider there, okay? Okay, so yes, everyone's asked, but no, you might argue no, because have these people truly decided at the time of the polling? Are they telling you the truth, or are they just mentioning a name for you to get away from them? And will they actually go out and vote, the people that you've actually asked? So that could contribute to an invalid conclusion as well. So great thinking. Okay, to determine the average lifetime of a type of light bulb, 150 light bulbs were randomly selected from the production line and tested. So is this a population or sample? I don't think the company probably makes only 150 light bulbs, and if they tested every single light bulb they made before they sold it, they wouldn't have any to sell. Yeah, because usually, well, sometimes it's a destructive sample, so sometimes it doesn't work and they can't sell it. They could. So what do you think? Sample or population? Yeah, probably a sample, right? Okay, a light bulb company is definitely going to make more than 150 light bulbs. Now it's selected. They're selected randomly, which I really like that word randomly, because when you select something randomly, there's a good chance that you're going to get all different types, right? It's not just, and we'll find out about sampling in the next section, I believe, but a convenience sampling or just some, a willing participant sample or those kind of things. Like if it's a truly random sample, you're going to get a light bulb that's great. You're going to get a light bulb that's bad sometimes. So truly random is really good. It's a sample. And what would you say about this? Do you like the conclusions that this would give?
Probably because they're all made by the same company under the same circumstances.
Okay.
Probably
Yeah.
with the same manufacturer.
Made by same company. Obviously, if it's on a production line, so that's right. It's right in the manufacturing place there. Yeah. So made by same company, under same conditions. Now, this might actually be an argument for no, because what if you have one factory that's super awesome, and they are so good at what they do, and they always make great ones? Or what if you go to another factory that is known to not be a very good factory, they don't do a very good job there, and you see that there's 100 out of 150 that are like brutal, like don't work. So that could be an argument for no, actually. Made by the same company under the same conditions at the same factory. That might call into question the validity, but I like your thinking, okay. Would there be an argument for no? Okay, yeah, we don't know. Yeah, perfect. Sample size, is it too small? Is like, how many do they make in total? If they make 300,000 light bulbs in a day, 150 is not much. That is not much at all, right? 0.05% or whatever it is, something like that. So no, is sample size, is it big enough? Okay. Oh, come on now, computer. My computer crashed on me several times in period 5 yesterday. I was like ready to chuck it out the window. But anyways, just a side note. Sample size, too small? We don't know. Okay. And actually, I would say that, you know what, this little bit right here, you could make an argument that that is part of the no too. Same factory, right? That could be part of the no too. Same conditions. So guess what? If they're screwing up on the assembly line somewhere, and all those light bulbs might be trash. Okay, well, anyways, good thoughts, good thoughts. I like it. Okay, here's your assignment. I'm gonna get you to write this down right here from the textbook. Pearson Math Makes Sense 9 textbook. It's on page 440. You're gonna do number 1 to 10, and you're gonna exercise some really good thinking like you've been showing me here this class. And you are going to be just the best critical thinkers in this whole room. Of the entire population of this room, you're going to be like just the top thinkers in the whole room. Yeah, the whole population of you right here. It's just going to be so awesome. 100% awesome. Okay. Any other questions before you move on, just to kind of work on this? Okay. All right, go ahead and get started on your assignment.